I'm just wondering, as we watch this chimney, I was just mentioning that we're still waiting for any sign of smoke from the morning's vote, but can you give us an idea where we are in the process this morning, these two morning votes going on right now?
Yes, I mean, of course, many people are gathered in the square, faithful pilgrims, but also plenty of journalists eagerly keeping their eyes on that chimney and the screens that show it all over St. Peter's Square and down Via della Conciliazione, leading towards the river here in Rome. And I mean, what we can tell so far from the outside is that, yes, the cardinals so far have not come to an agreement as to who should be the next pope. And the longer that takes, the more names that we might not have considered before might start to emerge. Right now, we know who the front runners are. And so if the smoke is white in today or early tomorrow, then we might have a good chance of predicting who it might be. But the jury is still out.
Lots to talk about from what you just mentioned. We'll talk about frontrunners in just a second, but it's obviously so top secret, Claire. But do we have a sense? I mean, there was the first vote yesterday, and it was black smoke as expected. Any idea what would be happening at this point? Would there start to be a shift? Would there start to be a consolidation around any particular candidate, do you think?
I mean, last night, we can imagine that after the vote, they probably, and, all cards are on the table at that point, they probably all met together and had dinner. That's an important moment where the cardinals finally, now living together without any influence from the outside, are starting to get to know, well, why did you vote for this one? Why did you vote for this other one? And discussing the pros and cons or what they'd like to see in the next pope. And probably some agreements are starting to be made. So what we can tell today is the result of those conversations, especially in this very first vote in the morning. Now, it would be a tremendous sign of unity and continuity probably with Francis if we saw white smoke today, whether early in the morning or the vote that happens in the afternoon. But we can, so far, no smoke, so we don't know what's happening. We know that yesterday it took a very long time for the cardinals to have that smoke come out. It's a larger number of cardinals in this conclave, the largest in history. And so that might be also pushing the time and maybe even the conversations a little longer.
2 hours, people were waiting beyond when they expected. So everything is a bit in flux, but we're here at the ready should we see any sign of things from the chimney that's up on our screen. As they have those conversations and as they reflect personally, we know in the homily just before they began yesterday, Claire, Cardinal Ray talked about this difficult and complex world. What are the main questions, the main issues, the dominant issue perhaps that you think the cardinals will be considering as they choose the successor to Pope Francis?
I mean, we saw that the congregations, these are the meetings of cardinals leading up to the conclave, issued a statement that talked about the many wars from Ukraine to the Middle East that are still ongoing and made an appeal for peace and ceasefire. So obviously, they are thinking about finding a pontiff who can in some way address in a credible way the needs of society today. But the church is also looking at its faithful, not only those who are regular churchgoers, but many more who started getting more interested in the Catholic faith under Pope Francis. So a big question for the cardinals right now is, okay, we need someone who understands Vatican diplomacy, who understands the finances of the Vatican and all these in-church things, but we also need that man to have a quality to speak to people outside. And that's the question that I've heard them grappling with the most, just how can we find someone who checks all these boxes? And probably these are big concerns for them. Of course, we know that the polarization that exists within our society has seeped into the Catholic Church as well. There are different takes on Pope Francis's pontificate, his opening towards marginalized groups. Some think that he may have gone too far. Many more think that there much more needs to be done. And we can't expect these conversations to not continue as they are in the privacy and secrecy of the conclave.
You know, I was reading one of the last pieces that you wrote in terms of covering this, and you speak of the issues with which Pope Francis dealt, not fully to the satisfaction of women's groups in many cases, and those who are victims of sexual abuse. And you've been writing about how, as we look at, maybe we can take a look at St. Peter's Square for just a moment, some of the people who have gathered in St. Peter's Square are actually representatives of those advocacy groups for women and for sexual abuse victims. They've been there to try to influence the cardinals before they went into the conclave to make sure that the Pope who's selected will address their issue. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and whether there's been any indication as to whether their efforts have had an impact?
Absolutely. I mean, many advocacy groups for survivors of sexual abuse in the church have been coming here to Rome to make sure that their voice is heard. When it comes to Pope Francis's legacy on sex abuse, he's done a lot, but much more needs to be done still. And so these advocacy groups are bringing out some of the problems in the way that our main candidates for the papacy address sexual abuse within their own diocese. Now, fortunately, when it comes to the main contenders for the papacy, these aren't people who were directly involved in sexual abuse, but there are serious cases of lack of oversight, accountability, and safeguarding for children that they want to make sure that people know as they walk in. And another topic you address is that of many women. I know that, for example, a group who was really interested in promoting the roles of women, making them heard in the church, and promoting the female diaconate. These are priests who can not say mass or hear confessions or anoint the sick, but have a lot of important roles within the church. They are here, and they had a pink smoke ceremony yesterday to just show we are here, we want to be heard as well. We don't know really how much this conversation, but I spoke to the Vatican spokesperson, and he said that several times during the general congregations leading up to the conclave, cardinals stood up and spoke to their fellow cardinals about the importance of finding someone who can credibly address the sexual abuse crisis and who can fix the critical issues that still exist in the church today in terms of protecting young people and vulnerable adults.
Really wanted to talk to you about that. I have someone who represents one of those groups who's going to be joining me later in our program. So I wanted to bring that up now in advance of that. Can I get your perspective? You mentioned this in passing, and I wanted to explore it with you because it struck me that the world attention really is on St. Peter's Square and that chimney right now, perhaps more than ever. And I was wondering myself, it was because perhaps of Pope Francis himself, whether it's because of the movie Conclave right now, whether it's because of what's going on in the world right now and we need leadership. Claire, I'm not sure, or all of these things. What do you think has really attracted the attention, particularly this time, to this conclave?
I mean, it's extraordinary the amount of people who happen to be here. Some of it, I think, also has to do with the time that this is happening. We are in a Jubilee year. That means many pilgrims, millions, were expected already to come to the Vatican. And they were hoping, I was speaking to some on the square this morning, to catch a glimpse of the Pope, Pope Francis, whom they loved. And instead, they're coming at this historical moment for the church. I will say that on social media, definitely the movie Conclave, I mean, we've seen it. It just brought this extra momentum, this extra attention to the church. But there's something about the secrecy of this event in a world that is so digital and so formal. The fact that all these people stand by to watch this smoke literally come out of a chimney to tell us who the next pope is, the fact that there's no way of knowing what is going on inside, no leaked information, no getting inside the minds of these cardinals, that has an incredible allure, and mixed with the Catholic Church's ability to bring aesthetics, drama, and showmanship to these great moments in its history. I mean, it's just a captivating thing to see for Catholics, of course, but also for non-Catholics who might just for the first time realizing, what is this strange thing that Catholics do every time a pope dies and a new one needs to be selected?
So Catholics, non-Catholics, but what about journalists? I was thinking that if you were a sports reporter, this would be like your Olympic moment. If you were a political reporter, this would be a big election. You are someone who reports for a religion news service. You are covering a conclave. What is the experience of covering this like for you?
I call it my Super Bowl. I mean, we are not sleeping, hardly eating, keeping our eyes. I mean, up to this point, really, our work was to try and speak to as many cardinals as possible, get interviews on and off the record, try and understand that. Unfortunately, I mean, I've been working on this beat for 8 years now, and that means that I've gone to their book presentations. I've witnessed them doing homilies for the death of their family members, or visiting the Pope or traveling with the Pope during his many visits throughout the world, and when I traveled with him. So this is a moment where, I mean, I'm so glad you asked that question, because everything that has been done, all this time spent covering the church sort of comes together, and the whole world is converging in St. Peter's Square. A really unique moment that is really, it will take time for me to be able to really
I'm sure that's true. But your experience and perspective is invaluable. So I hope, Claire, we can have further conversations. Who knows how long we'll be waiting? Lots of time to carry on our discussion. But thank you for this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.